Chapter 9. Whenever Maggie looked back upon her first full morning at Adelphi Hills, she would think only of its profound silence. So quiet was the house, so still, she felt as though it had been frozen into a painting. And for a long time, she couldn't tell whether it was too early for anyone to be awake or too late for anyone to still be at home. At last she rose and parted the curtains. It was barely morning. The garden was whitened with a pale dew, and the birches where she had laid out her little rooms with sticks the day before hung like slender ghosts against the gray sky. How would she be awakened here? She wondered. In some places there would be a clangorous bell. In others, a house mother would slap the window shades up, letting the glare of the day attack your eyes. But there was no bell or house mother here, and the two aunts who found her impossible to handle might decide not to awaken her at all. The tray that had been left outside her door the night before had been removed. Maggie had heard it being lifted from the floor, and she heard, too, the rustle of a dress and the sound of footsteps disappearing down the hall. She sat on the window seat a long time, watching the color seep back into the lawn and wondering what it was going to be like to live in a boarding school, or whatever this was, with no other children. Often, walking about among the halls and grounds of her old school, she had pretended that the buildings had been emptied of everyone but herself, and she had suddenly become their sole inhabitant. This big room will be my bedroom, she had decided, and the auditorium will be a ballroom where I will dance alone. It will have a red wallpaper and a black rug, and there will be white curtains on all the windows. Those were her favorite colors, red and black and white, the colors of her playing cards. The best part was always the garden. Usually she would let it remain unchanged. The concrete playing fields and the groups of trees would stay as they were. The only difference would be that no one else would be there, and she would aim basketballs at the hoop and wind about among the trees totally alone, her whole life through. Now she had an enormous house almost to herself, and she wondered what it would be like. Silently, she got dressed. Not in any of the dresses hanging ghost-like from the pole in the closet, but in her own clothes, a thin skirt too cool for a late September day, a tan blouse with a split in the uniform seam, and unmatched socks, and slowly made her way along the hall down the stairs. The gray morning light was beginning to creep through the parlor curtains and settle on the gray of the walls, leaving no glow. The first thing Maggie saw was the pair of portraits above the mantel, and she gazed up at the two austere faces, noticing today some things she had missed the day before. A small black and white dog curled at the man's feet. Maggie put her hand out. "Don't touch," a voice cried, and Maggie spun around. Her two great aunts were seated side by side, quiet as cats, on the gray plush sofa. Their bodies were erect, their hands folded in their laps, and their eyes fastened intently upon her. They were wearing different colors today, and Maggie had to squint in the gray light to find the freckles that would distinguish one from the other. "Paintings are to be admired by the eye, not the hand," one of them said. "Aunt Harriet, wrinkles, no freckles." "That is a rule. Remember it at all times." Maggie turned back to the pictures and put her hands at her sides now, and examined the dog curled sleepily at the feet of its master. "Look at your aunt when she speaks to you." That was the other one, Aunt Lillian, freckles. "And don't squint. Squinting weakens the muscles of the eye." Maggie faced her two aunts again, looking from one to the other and finally dropping her eyes to the rug with its vines and blossoms and still colorless in the early light. Aunt Harriet suddenly spoke out. "Those were the founders of the academy," she explained. This building at one time housed a girls' school, and it was founded by the two people in those portraits you see, the Greens." "They were our ancestors," Aunt Lillian put in. "They are your ancestors as well," she added, running her eye over Maggie's body, "although I can't say they would be happy to know it." Her ancestors. Maggie jumped at the thought, and her eye shot back to the two faces in their sturdy frames. Imagine having ancestors when she didn't even have a mother and a father. "Now we are the only ones left," Aunt Lillian continued. "We and your Uncle Morris, and you, of course," she added with a sigh. Uncle Morris. Where was Uncle Morris? She realized now that of all the rooms she had entered on the day before, none seemed to belong to him. Where did he sleep? "The academy was founded as a girls' school for carefully chosen girls," Aunt Lillian went on. "Girls with character. Character is the most important element in a human being's life. Remember that at all times. The founders cared a great deal about character and healthful living, Aunt Harriet said. Stop sucking your hair. That's a disgusting habit. Disgusting. They ran the school for nearly 50 years, and it was thought to be one of the finest in the country. Then came the misfortune, and now the new academy is down the road, Aunt Lillian interrupted, and it is run by people who take any children at all. They take children of wealth, Aunt Harriet said. Wealth and character do not always agree. They take boys, Aunt Lillian said. They will take you, Aunt Harriet told Maggie. Tomorrow you will begin attending New Adelphi Hills Academy. It is not at all like the original, but nothing else is available, and you will receive a small amount of learning there. As for your character, we will look after that ourselves. School. Tomorrow she would have to go to school. A day school where everybody went home every afternoon instead of just on weekends or not at all. A rich kid's school. Her stomach sank. Stand up straight, Aunt Harriet said. A healthy body requires a straight spine. Say that to yourself several times a day. A healthy body requires a straight spine.